Yes, you're good to go now.
Okay. Hi, good evening to everyone listening to this. I'm David Abraham. My Slack handle is David Black, and today we're going to be walking through one of the most interesting parts of UX, which is user research. This is the part one. There are going to be two other subsequent parts, and at the end of the day, you would have gone through the entire design process. That is empathy, define, ideate, design, and test. So at the end of the third aspect of the user research, you would have gone through all that, and you would have been able to go from addressing a problem to creating a solution. So let's go right into it. Today we'll cover introduction to user research. We'll consider categories and methods of research. We'll talk about a research plan, which I'm sure that many of you have been worried about all day. Then we'll talk about recruiting participants. Yes, there's a way to do it. And we'll talk about conducting interviews the right way. And we'll also look at the tools we use for this stage. All right. So you already know that at the empathy stage, you have to go and identify the problems and understand the key pain points of users. So that is really what user research is about. User research.
My girl was on.
There's an interruption, please. Okay. So user research helps us to examine the user's problems, their needs, their emotions, and motivations through observation and feedback. What we're trying to do when we say we want to do user research is to really go out there and talk to the ideal users of our products and explore the world from their view, to understand their motivations, to understand what matters to them, to understand the problems they face on a day-to-day, and then use that understanding to create great user experience, to create great solutions for them, to make their lives better, of course. So let's talk about the categories of research. And the first category is based on when it happens. And under this, we have firstly, foundational research. Foundational research happens before anything is designed. It could come in the form of talking to experts of the field. It could come in the form of doing secondary research, which means just going online and seeing what people have actually talked about, what people have discovered about that industry, about things that relate to the product that you're trying to build. And actually, a part of foundational research is also talking to people and doing surveys. And then design research, which is the second type of research, is the second category under when it happens, is the kind that happens just before you go into well, it happens when you want to test your ideas very early. Say, for example, you've already done your foundational research and you've done some prototyping. I mean, you've just done some basic sketching. You'll get to understand more about prototypes later on. But you've done your basic sketches. You have not really done the high fidelity, but you just want to test your ideas very quickly so you can do some iteration before doing the high fidelity. This is the point where you do design research. So it happens more like in the middle of the design process. And then there's the post-launch research, which happens when you've gone through the entire design process, you've done your hi-fi, it has gone into development, and then you've launched. So usually this is in form of user testing and getting feedback post-launch. And then there's also a category that is based on who conducts the research. And then there's primary research. In primary research, you actually go out there, meet the users, and find answers yourself. And then secondary research is where you go online or go through what people have done in the past, or maybe even read through books and use information that somebody else has done primary research before. And then the third category is based on the data type. First one is the qualitative research. This focuses on observing a small number of people, understanding their needs, emotions, and motivation. Now, the kind of data that you collect in qualitative research is usually in form of words, in form of experiences, in form of values, etc. And then there's quantitative research, which focuses on data that can be gathered by counting and measuring. And you usually get this kind of responses, this kind of data through surveys of a very large amount of people. Now, the best kind of user research that you want to do is the combination of both qualitative and quantitative. So you go out there, you get to talk to people, you hear their experiences, and then you back up those as what you've heard with some quantitative, with some numbers. Okay. So there are three main research methods. There are interviews. This is where you recruit people, which we're going to be talking about a little later. And then you talk to them. You ask them questions. Now, this is I'm beginning to sound like a broken record. So yeah, you ask questions about their experiences and you get detailed feedback by asking follow-ups, by asking why, saying how, asking how, and just listening to them at length. And then surveys, like I said before, they used to solidify the understanding of a problem by conducting surveys for a very large crowd. And then usability studies, they used to get feedback on prototypes or products. Excuse me. So those are the main research methods that you need to know now. There are others, but this is just about enough for your level. Okay, we should also talk about the qualities of a good researcher, because there are soft skills, so to say, that you should have in order to do this work well. First is empathy. And empathy is understanding a person's feelings or thoughts in a situation. When I talk about empathy, I always like to separate it from sympathy. Empathy takes a lot more imagination and careful listening than sympathy. So if someone comes and tells me that this shoe is really tight and it pinches, I would say, sorry, right? So it's, sympathy, that's sympathy. It's a little bit condescending. But empathy is when you actually listen, you imagine yourself wearing those shoes too, and try and put yourself in that frame of mind. So yes, empathy is very, very important. So it's a very important soft skill to have as a researcher. It would help you really project into the person's world and be able to identify what they need, what has meaning to them, what pushes them on, what draws them back. And having this understanding will go a long way in helping you to create meaningful experiences for them. And then there's collaboration, the ability to work with a range of people, personalities, and work styles. If all goes well for you and you get a very good job in a big organization, you would have to be working with a wide cross-section of people, product managers, developers. If you are hired as strictly a researcher, it means you have to be working with interaction designers, UI designers, branding, marketing, sales, and also the key stakeholders, the people at the top. So you need to know how to work with people, how to work together, how to synergize with people. It's really important. And then there's pragmatism. Pragmatism means being practical about everything, being really particular about how things would work practically. That is really what pragmatism is, and it's important. It's an important thing to have because it is very easy to stray away when research is going on for a very long time. So you have to have that mindset of, okay, where were we and how can we go back to where we were and still stay on course? So yes, pragmatism is a very important quality of a good UX researcher. Now let's talk about the research plan. A research plan is a short document that sets out the initial thoughts on the research projects in a logical and concise manner. So you've started on your design process, you've gotten the brief, you've done some secondary research, and now it's time to plan how you're going to get feedback. That is the part where your research plan comes in. And it usually consists of the research background, the research goals or objectives, the research questions, then the screener questions, the interview script, and then a list of participants. Having a list of participants inside the research plan document is it's not mandatory, but it's a good practice to have it there. We are going to go through each of these items one by one, and we'll do so with the help. We'll do it practically with the help of this brief. So this is a sample brief, and it says that we should try and create a mobile app that helps people order and subscribe to dog food. The first thing you want to do is to write out the background. You can call it a research background, you can call it a project background, and it's more like a small, straightforward, or should I say, holistic understanding of the problem described, and is usually flowed through secondary research. And this secondary research will most likely be carried out by yourself, depending on the scenario, or if your organization has a research team or your product manager. But there has to be a why. There has to be a reason. A practical reason, not just a reason that you thought of. And if that reason is not well articulated, it already begins to show some sign of red flag. So I should also say that in a way, this research background also helps you do some level of validation of the idea. Okay. Next, you want to consider your research objectives. And I think I should point out at this point that you need to pen each of these things down. There's something about writing out your ideas that helps you. It's good to always put it down and see how it's going, to be able to articulate what is the ideas, how they are in your head. So yeah, each of these will need to be penned down in a document. So research objectives is a holistic statement of what you hope to achieve with your research. What are you going to get out of this research? What do you hope to, why are you going for research? What do you want to have when you come back, when you're done talking with the users? What knowledge, what insight do you hope to have at the end of the day? That's what your research objective is. And I crafted just a small research objective for the dog food app, and it says to uncover the behaviors, motivations, and pain points of dog owners when they order and subscribe for dog food. You can have as many as you want. I could have. It's possible that you have 4 different research objectives, but it's just make sure that it's focused, it's realistic, and it's not sending you in too many directions. You want to stay focused on understanding the things that really matter to you in building the right product for your users. So mostly it's going to be about the behaviors, the pain points, and the motivations, or pain points or challenges. So it's mostly going to be about behaviors. You need to understand, because you need to understand behaviors so that you can build a product that flows with how they do their day-to-days. You do not want to build a product that interrupts their habits. You don't want to build a product that makes them change their lifestyle so radically. So you want to build a product that flows well with their behaviors, which is why it's very important to uncover behaviors and to also uncover their motivations, the reason why. Why do they have this problem? How did they get here? In a way, you're learning their story around that problem. You're learning about them, which is why empathy is really important, which is why imagination is really important. It's almost as if in that circle of that idea, you're learning their life story. That is how user research really is. And then you want to talk about you want to think about getting their pain points and their challenges, and make sure that each of these things are focused around the idea that you're trying to build, and you're not going in too many directions at once. And then you want to pen down your research questions. This is a draft of questions that you hope to get answers to when you are done with your research. Now, these are not the same as interview questions. These are more like the questions that will lead to the interview questions. You want to write out the things you're curious about when it comes to this research, and you can have as many as you want. You really can have as many as you want, but at the same time, try and stay focused on what matters the most to building the right thing. And then after that, let's talk about screener questions. Now, screener questions help you get the right people to speak with. Not everybody is your ideal user. Not everybody is your ideal user. One of the best practices that they say in design is to design for one person, precisely one person, one very, very real person. Design is, that's what they say. Design a solution for one person and make sure that it makes sense to that one person. So never hope that everybody is going to use design. Now, this does not mean that you shouldn't make the design accessible to make it usable to as many people, irrespective of their backgrounds, their disabilities, etc. No. What I'm trying to pass across here is that make sure that your solution is useful to at least one person, and let that person be real. Let at least one person be able to say that, yes, this solves my problem. And having screener questions before your interview helps you to achieve that. Also, it helps you to get the right feedback. So once you identify the right person who your product is for, you want to now talk to them, and screener questions help you do that. So there are questions that help you recognize the ideal set of users to interview. That is your representative sample. And your representative sample is a subset of the target audience that seeks to accurately reflect the characteristics of your larger group. And you choose your interview participants based on the answers you get to the screener questions. So I did some screener questions for the dog food app as an example. So a good screener question will be, do you have a dog? And have you bought anything online? Now, if they answer yes to these two, means that they are closer to who your ideal user would be. And if they answer no to these two, means they're farther from it. It's really simple. Just think about it. A person who doesn't have a dog obviously will not have any need to want to buy dog food. Most times, of course, there are special cases. Maybe, okay, so I don't have a dog, but maybe a friend asks me to help him out because maybe he's ill. That's a different case. But talking about the ideal user, the everyday user, yeah. So you want it to be somebody who has had a dog, who has developed behaviors around having a dog, who is motivated, innately motivated, not externally, innately motivated to actually want to buy dog food. And also, for the second question, you want someone who is actually, is accustomed to getting things online, so that when you ask about the experiences, they have something useful to fuel your design decision. So if they answer yes to the two questions, they might be a good fit. And if not, they may not. And then let's talk about the interview script. Just like in acting, they give the actors a script to master. and then they memorize the script. Now that's in acting, they memorize the script, and when they get on stage, they deliver. In acting, it is not, well, I'm not exactly sure about this, so I may be wrong, but I believe that there are spontaneous moments, even in acting, despite the fact that they have to master their script. We can use that idea to think about interview scripts. Interview scripts help us to stay focused on what matters the most, what we want, the feedback that we want to get the most out of our user interviews. It helps us to stay on track. It helps us to remember, because realistically, not everybody can cram scripts. Not everybody is going to be actors. So it helps, it reminds us of the questions to ask. Now, in your script, it's always good to have an intro, and always try as much as possible to frame your questions around why and how. However, careful not to be too devoted to the script. People have very, very, very different experiences, and your job is to learn about them, to uncover them. Don't let a script get in the way of this. Let me quickly share an experience. Sometime last year, I interviewed somebody, and when I reached out to the person, I told the person that this interview is going to last just 30 minutes, and all my other interviews had lasted 30 minutes. So I was really sure that it can't go beyond 30 minutes. But by the time the person started talking, by the time I started asking why this, why that, okay, what happened here? What were you thinking at this moment? She kept talking and talking, and the interview lasted 50 minutes at the end of the day, 50 plus minutes. And the feedback I got really, really went a long way in helping me to craft a good experience. So don't say, okay, my own script has finished. Let's end this. Let's get out of here. No. The goal, remember, you're trying to be pragmatic, practical approaches. You want to learn as much as possible, as matters to your product, as matters to their problems, their challenges. So don't ever let a script get in the way of that. Okay, so how to recruit participants. So you've done a screener survey. It's now time to reach out to people. Now, the first and the one I'd advise you to do the most is your personal network. If you're working in an organization, if you're working in a big organization, an organization that is design mature, you most likely get a budget to recruit people, invite them over, even offer them coffee, get a very nice place to have the interview. But you're not there yet, yeah. So you want to work, you want to be flexible within the constraints that have been made, that you have found yourself in. So I would say that for this task, you want to reach out to your friends. But remember that in as much as you want to leverage on your personal network, don't forget to present them with your screener survey to determine that they meet the requirements for your product. Yeah, so you reach out to them, you give them the survey. If their responses are satisfactory to what your research needs are, and then you invite them to the interview. So that is how you should go about it. But there are other ways. If you are working in an organization that has already shipped a product, you would already have an existing user base. So in that case, you can recruit participants from there. And then you can actually find participants to test your product online and to also find people to interview online. Some websites that offer that include usertesting.com and userinterviews.com. Also, there are recruiting agencies, organizations that are devoted to helping you find research participants. You pay, of course. So now let's talk about how to conduct interviews well. Now, before the interview, prepare and go over your interview scripts. It will always be a good idea to go over your work. Just like in school, when you're done with your theory and your OBJ, and you still have time, you go over it again, and very likely you'll find mistakes that you've made. So you want to also bring that idea into the work you do in research. So you go over your interview scripts, look for discrepancies and correct them, and then get everything you need for the interview. If you need notes, if you need recorders, get everything you need before time. Don't wait till the person gets on the Google Meet or walks into the interview center before you start running helters. Okay, let me not use that word. Start running up and down to get what you need. And then practice the delivery of questions. Think of how you're going to frame the questions in a way that would make sense to them. And also think of, how would I interpret this question? Some questions, truth, we're not perfect, but oftentimes your questions might come across as vague to the recipient. So you want to think about that. Empathy again, you want to put yourself in their shoes and say, okay, how would I interpret this question? And if you see that, okay, this might not be too clear, you say, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. You don't even have to change anything in your script for that. You got to say, okay, I know this is the question I wrote down, but this is actually how I should say it, so it will make sense to the person listening, to the person I am interviewing. And then you want to look into your users a little. If there are people in your personal network, maybe even your friends, well, you probably already know a little about them. But if they're strangers, you want to look into their demographics, you want to look into their age, and maybe a little bit about their experiences, just to manage your expectations. And finally, have a backup plan. Things can go wrong. If you're in an online meeting, you want to perhaps have an extra device in case something happens, or if in the case of Nigeria, network can go bad. You want to make sure that you have maybe data on two different SIMs. So if MTN decides to ghost you, that they quickly switch to Glo, something like that. Or if it's a recorder you're using, and it's always a good idea to have an extra recorder if it's a recorder you're using, in case all of a sudden something happens, or even if it's just getting extra batteries. The point is, have a backup. Anything could go wrong, and you want to keep your interviewees engaged and everything calm and good and successful. Then during the interview, first thing you want to do is meet the participants. That involves introducing yourself and then having them introduce themselves, and then thank them for coming, and create some rapport now. It's very important that you put your participants in a very open mood, in a very comfortable mood, so that they are able to share their experiences. At the end of the day, you are prying to an extent anyway, because for some researchers, you would have to ask about some things that happened in their personal lives. You might have to ask about their age. I remember once asking about the age of the participant, and I did that because I really needed it. And you know, in Africa, they say that asking for a lady's age is wrong, but I had to do it. But because I had already set a very good pace, asking wasn't too much of a hassle. I asked politely, and she was happy to oblige. So you want to set a very good pace. You want to keep them comfortable, and a very good way of doing that is creating some reports. Ask them, so what do you do? How was your day? What are your hobbies? You know, let them share the superficial stuff. Let them be comfortable in sharing stuff, and make sure to listen. Listen all the way. Your job is to listen. It comes easy to some, doesn't to others, but either way, now that you need to have it, try as much as possible to be a good listener. Don't interrupt. Let them finish. Even if they talk for 2 minutes straight, keep saying, I'm listening. Go on. And what happened next? You know, just open your ears. Then ask open-ended questions. Don't ask leading questions. Leading questions are questions that influences the person's thoughts to your train of thought. You want to avoid that. You want to ask, rather than asking, did you like this experience? You want to ask, how did you feel about this experience? You want to ask, instead of asking, did you feel bad about this? You want to ask, how were you feeling at the moment? Or you don't want to ask, were you happy? Did this app make you happy? No, you want to ask, what was your experience while using the app? Neutral questions, open-ended, questions that can go either way. And then you want to ask follow-ups. So if they say, I felt really bad, and then you say, can you tell me why? And then when they tell you why, and you pick up a phrase that they mentioned, and you say, what were you thinking at this point? So you just ask follow-ups. And when you ask your follow-ups, let them talk. It's really important to let them talk. And then take notes. You want to take notes of compelling quotes, things that they said that really struck you. You want to take notes of observations, body languages. Yes, you want to literally write, they moved in a certain way, or they frowned at this point. You want to write things like that. It helps you understand the emotional experience and how serious, how deep the pain point is. These types of things will always help. You can also record, but make sure to tell them that you're going to record. I think in America, there's a law against it. Hello? Okay. So you want to record, but make sure you ask for permission. And then at the end of everything, ask them, do you have any other thing to say, any other feedback, anything at all that you want to say? So give chance for final thoughts and comments, and then thank them again. And also leave the door open for them to contact you in the future if they thought of anything that they didn't think of during the interview. So useful tools for this stage: Google Suite, Google Docs for writing your research plan, then Google Sheets for analyzing your form responses, and then Google Forms for your surveys. And then my role is for research analysis, and it's a whiteboarding tool, and FigJam tool is a whiteboarding tool. FigJam belongs to Figma, but this time it's for whiteboarding. And then I did some templates for you guys. So there's an interview mail template, and then there's a research plan template. Please don't copy word for word. Please, it's supposed to guide you and see how to organize the structure of your research plan and your interview mail. Inside the research plan, okay, let me quickly go through it so that you know what to expect. So, oh dear. Oh boy. What is going on? Okay. Let me quickly stop sharing and then share again so that you can see. Okay. So this is the template for the research plan. You have the idea brief, then you have your clients. In this case, we are your clients, the mentors, and then your role here, the product designer. Then you have your research background at the very top. There's some instruction there to help you, and then the problem statement. So I said, elaborate on the problem statement here, make it as clear as possible, meaningful, and valid to the target users. And then your research objective, we talked about that, and then research questions, and then your screener survey, your ideal, how we are going to recruit. So what you want to do is you want to duplicate this document and then make it your own. Follow the guide here and adapt it to your own idea, your own research. And then there are screener questions, and then there's a timeline, and then there's the interview scripts inside. And then there's a conclusion on what you need to do. And then let me switch to share the whole screen. Okay, so you also have the interview mail template. Now, you may not have to use this, but I just wanted to include it in case you needed it in the future. So this is useful in the case where you are talking to complete strangers and you want to recruit them because they fit into the target users, into the representative sample. So your name, you tell them the product you're working on, and then you appreciate them a little, and then you tell them where, you tell them the date, you tell them the time, you tell them how long, and then you also mention that with their permission, you will record the interview, and then you leave the door open for questions, and then you leave a call to action if you're interested. Let me know when you're available, and then you end with your first name and last name. And I think that's it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's it. This brings us to the end of the very first class on user research. So we have some time for questions, which is really great. So I will take questions now. Yeah, take questions. We'll take questions for, I think, 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll go at 8. Oh my, I'm just seeing this. I hope it got better as things went on. Okay. Must interviews be carried out? Yes. Yes, please. Very, very important. You need to get the experience of going out there and getting feedback from users. It's a very invaluable skill that you need to have as a product designer. I have a question about submission. Are we to submit the research plan we are to create or have created? So you're submitting the research plan, you're submitting the interview questions, but not the answers, not yet. In the next task, we'll talk about analyzing the feedback you get. And at that, the task that follows, you will be able to submit the responses. So make sure that you take notes of the responses, whether by jotting something down or by recording and then writing interview notes. So you want to take note of the responses you've gotten. You want to take note of as much as you can. Then the timeline. The timeline is just, well, for your task, just write the timeline based on how long you have to submit the task. But in the real sense, it depends on what the organization has planned. So if your research is going to last for a week, let's say it's a sprint, you say, okay, interviewing participants is from 6th of July to 7th of July, and then analysis, it's just, timeline is just timeline, like how long each activity will take, that's everything. Will the templates be made available? Yes. Must all interviews be physical? No, you can do it on Google Meet. You can do it on Zoom. But just make sure that you're asking the right questions and you're getting the right answers from the right people. Well, there are no right answers, but make sure you're talking to the right people. And do we have to use members from Zuri? No. No. Remember, what matters the most is if the people that you wish to talk to are inside your representative sample. They represent the ideal user, so you can get valuable responses. So yeah, you can use inside Zuri, you can use outside Zuri. Anyway, but just make sure that you're talking to the right people, the ones that matter the most to you, the kind of products you're trying to build. Please, are we to carry out both survey and interview on the participant? Yes, you have to carry out both the screener survey and then the interviews. Minimum 5 people. Can we use Google Survey to gather responses? Yes, you can use Google Survey to gather responses. How about having the interview online? How do we set up this meeting? By talking to the person you want to interview. By talking to the person you want to interview. As long as both of you are in agreement and then both of you get on the meeting, you have your interview and then you record your responses. We are not recruiting 5 people to work on the project as a team. You are recruiting 5 people to talk to. You are doing this individually. Individually. There's no team setting yet. You are doing this task. One person interview 5 people. One person interview 5 people. That's how you're doing it individually. You're creating a research plan on your own. There is no team setting yet till the project phase. What is the structured approach in the research? I do not understand that question, but well, you can DM me to explain better. I don't understand, so I'm just going to move on because there are a lot of questions. So, are we also to carry out the interview the same way with people from Slack? I mean, would be okay. A lot of typo errors here, but it doesn't have to be physical. Let me reiterate that. You can do it virtually, but make sure you're talking to the right people. Will I give you my Figma file to study? Yes, I will. Can't we do a survey? You can't do a survey alone. You do a survey first and then you carry out your interviews. You talk to people. You follow your interview script that you have written. Yeah, you had written before the interview. Please go over the research file. You get the research file. You can look at it all day, every day. Okay, you can use Google Meet for your interviews. You can do your interviews remotely. You can do your interviews remotely. You don't need to leave your house and start looking for people now. You can look for people online and you can interview them online. I'm saying it again. You don't do only survey. You do your survey, you conduct your interviews. It has to be a fresh idea. Don't do a research on an existing app. You don't even know how to do that yet. So don't shoot yourself in the feet. Pick one, find an idea from any of the industries, and then do your task, do your research. It would be good if you can have an idea of those topics. Be working on fintech, agro. You can use Google for that. Fintech is financial technology, agrotech is agri-technology, etc. But Google will answer. What's the minimum number of questions we can ask? Well, you don't want to ask too little. If you ask too little, you won't get enough information. If you don't have enough information, you want to understand the problem. You want to understand what your users need. So I can't tell you, okay, minimum of 4. I can't do that. Well, definitely, if your questions are not thoughtful and detailed enough, it would affect you. But as much as possible, try and dig into what your users need. First outline your research questions and use those research questions to carve out interview questions. If you do that, you definitely get at least 8 to 9 questions that are meaningful, not fluff, but actual meaningful questions that get you good answers. You can't use, you cannot use questionnaires only. You have to talk to people. You need to talk to people. You have to submit 1 A and 1B. You have to submit 1 A and 1B. Are we basing the research on the feature of the products? Not a feature, you're doing a whole, you're picking it from an idea and then you're doing research on it. The feature, palaver, the feature, you will think of features later. For now, just do your research. How do we know the right person to interview? I've spoken about this. You want to ask them screener questions that will help you know if they're part of your representative sample. I'm guessing this person came late, I don't know. So once you see that they've responded positively to your screener questions, you know that, okay, this is the right person. You have to think of who your ideal user is and use that to generate your screener questions. How do we couple the survey and the interview feedback? They're two different things. You do your survey and then you do your interview. They're two different things. Assuming you know nothing about the space, what do? You read. And why choose a niche you know nothing about? What are you looking for? Well, you can challenge yourself, but if you're going to challenge yourself, it means you have to go the extra mile. So yes, you can go into a niche that you don't know anything about, but going there means that you're going to first understand what's going on there before you now say, okay, I want to pick an idea to solve for. So I think because of time constraints, just pick a niche that you're comfortable with and then with an idea to do research on. And the survey questions serve as screener questions. Yes, the screener question is a subset of the survey. Yes, this question is very important. If I get it clear, does this mean we're submitting only the research plan and our interview questions? Well, not only, but yeah. If you do everything that you have, if you detail your research plan very well, and then have your interview script, yeah, that's exactly what we're asking you to do. But remember, you're also supposed to interview people. Only thing is that we're not asking you to submit the interview results yet. You're going to be submitting it in your next task. So don't try and play smart and just write interview questions and then submit and say, I'm done with the task. Do your interviews. Do your interviews. Very important that you do your interviews so that for the next task, you're ready. If you don't do your interviews now and the next task comes, you start running up and down. It'll be bad for you. I promise you, you're not going to like it. Okay. Is the research based on a fictional product? Let's not call it fictional. Create an idea that is buildable. Think of problems in a niche and then create an idea and then do your research. I don't understand the survey parts. How does one carry out a survey? Put your questions in a survey, send it to your WhatsApp status. That's how to carry a survey. Send it to your network, send it to the Slack channel you're in, send it to wherever it is that you have people. Create the survey, send it out, and include an introduction in the survey. I'm trying out to research on this. Please fill out the survey. I would love to get your responses about this topic. It's really helped my research. That's all. Put your questions, you get your responses, you record your responses. Is it the same people that fill out our survey? When you do your screener survey, you pick out people that best fit your ideal users. Are we to submit the interview record? No, please don't submit the interview record. Keep it, take interview notes, keep it. You will need it for your next task. Is it just based on the screener survey, or we can do screener survey? You can do screener and survey. You can do screener survey. You can also do survey for qualitative research, but you have to do. No, you can't do surveys for qualitative research. Surveys are mostly for quantitative research. Qualitative research involves talking to people. We're sending the survey to just 5 people. You're sending it to as many as you can to get the right people to invite to your interviews. Please go over the tools again. Google Docs, FigJam, Miro. FigJam is for whiteboarding. I think next class I'll walk through it. But now you just have to worry about Google Docs, Google surveys as well, Google Forms. We'll talk about FigJam in the next class when it's time to do your empathy mapping, etc. After picking a niche, are we allowed the liberty of picking specific research? Why? It's like developing a logistic app for SMEs. It sounds like a nice idea. So yeah, I guess you can go in that direction. Actually, it does sound like a nice idea. Please work within the niches that were highlighted in the task. You're submitting what the task has been modified to what you're supposed to submit. Follow the details of the task. All right, I think we're going to be rounding off questions. Should our questions be based on existing products? No. You create an idea, you do your objectives, you outline your research questions, you do your screener survey, then you do your interview script. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so pro tip from a mentor. At the end of your screener survey, you can ask that, would you like to have a physical interview with me? So yes, that would help them. That would really help you to get people to come into interviews with you. Yeah, so when you do your screener survey, at the end, after you've asked your screener questions, you want to ask, would you like to come in for an interview? And if the answer is affirmative, you can take it from there. Difference between survey and interview. Survey, you don't talk to the person. You just ask questions that they fill in their answers. Interviews, they're more detailed. You're asking them questions. You're asking follow-up questions. You are getting insights about their experience, etc., etc. Okay, I think that's everything. 4 minutes to 8, I think we can call it a day here. So this has been fun. So see you on Slack. Any more other questions, you can reach out to me. Please do not draw an empathy map yet. Please do not draw an empathy map yet. It's not time for that yet. Please do not draw an empathy map yet. Thank you for coming. We'll see you on Slack. Any other questions that I couldn't attend to, you can reach out to me, my dear. Okay, good night, everybody. Thank you very much.